if you're able to hear me, because even though we're connected to the server, I did not hear the music, and so I'm not sure if something is going on. And so we'll see, but I'll continue until somebody gives me a heads up. I'm pretty sure we're good with the YouTube crowd, but I just want to make sure that this is going to be captured in the archives and that everybody that's tuning in through the Truth Frequency Radio network and all of the live broadcasts that are going out on the different AM and FM radio stations are able to hear me. And so just let me know if you can, because I've never had it do this before, but we'll continue as if I am connected in live broadcast. And so this evening will be a follow-up to what I was talking about in the previous show last night, and also the previous couple of weeks, speaking about the pre-Adamic age, the prior times, and what is the destruction of the first world age, which very few people know about. And so last night I also spoke about how in the Greek mythology there is allusion to 3 floods that destroyed the silver and the bronze age. And it's interesting that the second one is attributed to an individual named Deucalion, which is the name of Noah in the Greek. And so just like the Bible and 2 Peter, this particular ideology is connected to the fact that there was a previous age that existed before the earth became without form and void, as it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and that this destruction of that previous world, it was also drowned and submerged by a flood, and that the mythology speaks about the destruction of Atlantis, which for the past 3 weeks we've been sharing numerous ancient accounts as well as various passages from the Bible, like Jeremiah chapter 4 verses 23 through 30 and Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 19 through 23, and other places which also speak about this particular destruction. 2 Peter chapter 3 on the world that then was, and how most are willingly ignorant of this particular event, and that because it was so very ancient and something that occurred in the very distant past, that even the prophets and the patriarchs of old are less familiar with what occurred during those ancient times. Okay, thank you, Grippy. I appreciate that. Okay, excellent. I appreciate that very much. All right, it seems that without a doubt we are connected, but something is up with the intro music for the various shows. So also with regard to the breaks in between the various segments, I'll know timing wise when they come up, but I'm going to have to keep a close eye out because we probably won't be able to hear those either. And so, anyways, this evening I'm going to share some stories on the ancient Pre-Adamites, and as well as the various accounts of the modern creation of humanity and the story of Adam and Eve and how that fits into the timeline, as well as why it was that in the ancient times, even the people that were here before the pre-Adamites that are said to have been created in Genesis 1:26 through 28, that there were people in the very ancient times before even the earth became destroyed and uh, without form and void. And it is my opinion that the ancient, very ancient, what Hesiod references as the Golden Age, and this was the age when the fallen angels themselves were banished from the heavens and cast down here to the earth, that they lived in this world and that they took on substance and became physical embodiments and were able to interact with the creatures and the beings of this particular world. That whereas they had once been corporeal, ethereal, and spiritual in nature, they then morphed and took on substance. And there's a passage, and I'm going to see if I can actually find this from I believe I have it saved in one of my files, so I'm going to see if I can bring that up just to give you source reference as to what I'm talking about. But that there's um, scriptural significance to what I am alluding to. Hopefully, this is the proper account. I have so many files and so much information that um, it's hard to keep up with it all. But I do believe it is in this particular text, this manuscript. And it'll be worthy, if I can find it, for me to share it with you. But even if not, then um, it will be fine for me to continue in story. No. Yeah, sorry. No. It's a different, and right now I don't have my hard drive, one of my external hard drives plugged in, and so I can't access this file. But anyways, it speaks about, and it's from the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets, and it gives an account of how the angels, once they are in this realm for longer than a week, they begin to take on substance and they begin to morph into physicality, which I thought was interesting because we always wonder about how it is that the Watchers, leaving their first estate, that they were able to mate with the daughters of Cain. And in Matthew, I believe it's chapter 23, verses 20, that Christ alludes to how the angels are not given in marriage. And the reason being is because they do not copulate. They are not required to have intercourse in order to propagate their race. Whereas humanity, that's the way that children are brought forth and the generations continued, is by men and women coming together, and through the act of love that they then bring forth children, and conceiving these children, those children will have other children, and so on and on and on. And this is what um, creates and maintains in life, and the passing on of it, the generations of humanity. And so, tonight I'm going to share with you some of the testimony of an individual named Credo Mutwa, who is a South African Sangoma, one of the last two what are called Sanusis, or medicine people, and that his family, and he was born of a bloodline which these shamans were brought up from his particular genealogy, and he inherited this knowledge. But being one of the last two individuals, he makes mention of his aunt and himself being the last two of the ancient Zulu nation, and these particular peoples to have the teachings passed on to them, and the ancient oral traditions which had been preserved only for a few select individuals, but that he felt like this knowledge was going to die with him. And so, having heard others speak of it in different manners, some of the ancient knowledge that he had, he shared it with, for instance, he did an interview with both David Icke as well as an individual named Rick Martin from Nexus Magazine. And both conducted very extensive interviews with him where he was given a chance to share some of these ancient oral traditions. And what is very intriguing about what he disclosed to the world through these interviews is that he is speaking about a very ancient time when these so-called gods, these ancient deities that descending out of the heavens, that they taught humanity certain knowledge and gave them certain capabilities in exchange for their reverencing them and worshiping them as their own gods. And that in doing so, many of the ancient peoples were led astray, because as it has now been determined, and as he speaks about himself, these deities were not gods in the sense that you have a compassionate, just, and loving and caring creator that manifests things in order and harmony, but that these particular deities demanded of them blood sacrifice. And because of that, it was, they some of them were doubtful as to whether these beings were truly godlike in any manner. And for many, it was determined that they were not, and they were not benevolent beings, and that they were more concerned with enslaving humanity and creating a servant class and in imposing their will upon those that were alive in those ancient times. And so, a fascinating story, and it also seems to fit into the narrative of what is revealed in the Sumerian chronicles, these stories that were published and put out by Zachariah Sitchin, the Genesis Revisited, and the Stairway to Heaven, and so many of those books. I've read all of them, so I used to be very familiar. The Lost Book of Enki, things of that nature. But that, speaking about all of that now, it was many, many years ago that I read through and spent a lot of time looking at and being intrigued by these particular stories of how the gods and the goddesses and those who descended out of the heavens to come here, that they were attempting to create a slave race out of the hominids that they found living here in this world. And that, once they did involve themselves with some of the peoples from the different regions of the world, that they, in those times, would assist the different individuals to achieve success. The different peoples that they came to, they would elevate them in knowledge and bring to them teachings and give them capabilities that they had not understood previously. But it was more to further their evolution so that they could better serve them in this servile role. And so, again, the whole concept of enslavement, both overtly and covertly, in that we see in the even in the ancient accounts in places like Peru and South America, Caracas, and even in Egypt with the Pharaoh Tutankhamun, you have the story of these elongated skull people, and that they had a a architecture or a bodily appearance, and also, um, archaeologically, when you discover the bodies and the skeletons of these pharaohs, these particular entities within the different grave sites littered all over the world, that often you would find, many different hybrid varieties of hominid type beings. Not only, I should check the. Okay, we got 5 minutes till break. But you would find, giants, grave sites of giants all over the world, especially here in America. There were some skulls found even with horns. And there were pictures of these skulls taken, but, conveniently lost by the Smithsonian Institute, that was uh, looked to as the proper governmental agency for people to share and send in and provide all of these archaeological artifacts. And I'm sure that all of these individuals thought the pieces that they sent in would be preserved and would be shared with other Americans, and also studied in a way that, answers would come forth, and that more and more people would be allowed to gather evidence of, the existence of this race of giant hominid. But unfortunately, that was not the purpose and not the role of the Smithsonian Institute. And they largely covered up the truth rather than presenting the evidence of what was discovered here in America and across the world. And these kind of things, I believe, were covered up because they do not support the whole evolutionary model of humanity evolving from monkeys. And that the presence of giants here in the world is a confirmation of the veracity of the Bible and it being the inspired word of the Most High God, which you don't see, anywhere else. Um, this truth being revealed in the manner that it is within the scriptures. And certainly the conquistadors and the ancient explorers that came here to North and South America and that made journeys and trips across from Europe to the other side of the world, they chronicle in their testaments of encountering huge populations, and that many of the native tribes that they had come across, they were their chieftains were some of these gigantic beings, these giants of very much larger stature and having different physiology. 6 fingers, 6 toes, double sets of teeth, skulls as so large that when discovered in the ground, it would, the individuals, regular humans, could fit their entire heads within the cranial cavity of these particular skulls. And so something weird has been going on with the Smithsonian Institute. And it's unfortunate that we have testimony from others that were in service to them of huge piles of evidence, vaults of evidence just being dumped into the ocean and disappeared. And certainly we know many people have reported losing, their evidence that was sent in as being lost by the Smithsonian Institute. All right, we'll be right back for next portion.
The daughters of Adam, the children of light, but also to rectify us and to restore us to our first estate in this manner, defeating death and bringing forth salvation with the promise of the cross.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Sacred Word Revealed
comes to Atlanta, Georgia
on September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end-time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
we must don the full armor of God.
Featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Nun,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Justin Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Martin, and thank you, brother, for creating the trailer for our Forgotten Edenic Books of Adam and Eve, which will be the next manuscript that we begin to read from and explore during the Digital Readers Club. And for those that don't know, every Saturday, 7 to 8:30 p.m., we get together as ecclesia and fellowship with one another from people from all over the world. And we read through these ancient manuscripts, like, for instance, just the book that we just finished reading 2 weeks ago was the Yahushua Christ, the infancy, early childhood, and lost years, which is a book that I put together that has all of the different stories from what are the ancient infancy gospels, the Proto-Evangelium of James, the infancy gospels of Thomas, Pseudo-Matthew, and others. They provide in great detail what occurred during the life of Christ that are excluded from the canonical materials. There's only one story of the entire youth life of early Christ before he was 33 years of age and given a task in fulfilling his ministry. And that was when he was 13 years old. And, he had left his mother and Joseph, and going back to the temple was found there, instructing the men of knowledge, the elders and the rabbis, and those teachers about what, the knowledge of the Aleph-Bet and so many other things that even from an early age, from 4 years and onward, there was nobody in Israel that would take him on as student because he was already knowledgeable and he was already informed upon the truth of, even the origin of each of the letters of the alphabet. And all this comes through in perfect clarity within these ancient accounts. And, again, for people that don't know about the lost years in the early childhood and the incredible stories of Christ and how he, even as a young child, he was fully incarnate as the Son of God and imbued with the authority of the pre-existing Godhead, that even as a young child, he had the power to take and even resurrect to life those that either he would punish or that had succumbed to death in some manner. And there are many stories of him resurrecting people even in his youth. And so, fascinating accounts. But anyways, this weekend we will begin reading the lost books of Adam and Eve, which give a story on the transition of how they lost their bright nature and eating from the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they took on flesh embodiment and, like the fallen angels, were cast out of the upper heavens, the place of the immortals, and taking on flesh embodiment, they found themselves banished to where Legion, the devils and the demons and the rebel angels and those that revolted against the Most High had already previously been banished down to and from. And so it'll be a very interesting read, to say the least. So just wanted to give a shout out to Morton. We greatly appreciate you, brother, and all the trailers and all the video adaptations that you make for the work that we do and the books that we've created. All right, so let's get into, I'm going to first read and share a specific account about what are called the Chita Uri. Credo Mutwa calls what is the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3, and that old serpent, that ancient dragon, Revelation 12:9, that attributes Satan as being reptilian in nature, and that being the father of Cain, who was said to be of the wicked one, and that the devil is the father of the tares, that the allusions to the children of Cain as being seraphic in appearance, Christ calls them a brood of vipers, that this is the reason why we see historically and mythologically all throughout, and even in the oral traditions, in the ancient mythologies, a connection with the fallen angels and the seraphim, which Sarah is singular for snake or serpent. And seraphim, of course, represents multiple serpentine entities. And so he's going to share with us, again, from these oral traditions, stories of who they were. And I think you'll find this fascinating. It says, and this is excerpt from the Pre-Adamite book that I'll be releasing, probably within 2 weeks, without a doubt. But it says, but when the Chitauri arrived in Africa, they told our people that they were gods and that they were going to give us human beings great gifts on one condition. We had to worship them and accept them as our creators. Some told our people that they were our elder brothers and that this earth had produced them generations ago. And they said they had come back to the green womb of their mother and that they were going to make us into gods. Jabilon, sir, is a very strange god. He's supposed to be the leader of the Chitauli. He is a god, to my great surprise, which I find a certain group of white people especially worshiping. We have known about Jabilon for many, many centuries, we black people, but I am surprised that there are white people who worship this god. And these people, amongst them, are people who many have blamed for all the things that have happened on this earth, namely the Freemason people. We believe that Jabilon is the leader of the Chitauli. And let me interject something here before we move forward. If you look up the origins and the worship of Jabilon by the secret societies, which we know that the Freemasons are worshippers of Satan, of Baal, of Lucifer, Prometheus, and that they believe that Satan gave us free will to not have to be enslaved to the will of the Creator, and that delivering that free will, much like Prometheus bringing fire to humanity and being punished for it, that they turned the story upside down of how Lucifer, that he gave of himself and broke the law of God in order to deliver independence and freedom to humanity so that we could live and learn through the experience of good and evil what it is to be gods or godlike ourselves. And that was the promise that was given to Eve, that she could be like a goddess. And of course, they bit hook, line, and sinker. And because of that, were placed under the authority of death. And so, anyways, Jabilon comes from Jehovah, Baal, and I believe it's 3 different gods. The god On, which is an Egyptian god as well. And so it's an unholy trinity is what the word is depicting and connecting to. And so continuing. He is the old one, and one of his names in the African language, sir, is Umbaba Samhongo, the Lord King, the great father of the terrible eyes. Because we believe that Jabulon has got one eye which, if it opens it, you die if he looks at you. Before human beings were created on this planet, which, we know it's a plane, but there had existed a very wise race of people known as the Emanukaela. These people had come from the constellation known to white people as Orion, and they had inhabited our Earth for thousands and thousands of years. And that before they had left our Earth to return once more to the sacred spider constellation, they made a great evacuation under the earth, beneath the Ruwensari Mountains, the mountains of the moon, and deep in the bowels of Mother Earth. The Emanuela built a city of copper buildings, a city with a wall of silver all around it, a city built at the huge mountain of pure crystal, the mountain of knowledge, the mountain from which all knowledge on earth comes, and a mountain to which all knowledge on earth ultimately returns. No matter where you go in Africa, no matter how deep into the interior of the dark continent you tread, you will find very ancient stories which are incredibly similar. You will find African tribes and races who will tell you that they are descendants from the gods who came out of the skies thousands of years ago. Some, however, say that these gods came to them from the sea in magical boats made out of reeds or wood or copper and even gold. In some cases, these gods and goddesses are described as beautiful human beings whose skins were either bright blue or green or even silver. But most of the time, you will find it being said that these great gods, especially the ones that came out of the sky, were non human, scaly creatures which lived most of the time in mud or in water. Creatures of an extremely frightening and hideously ugly appearance. Some say that these creatures were like crocodiles, with crocodile-like teeth and jaws, but with very large round heads. Some say that these creatures are very tall beings with snake-like heads, set on long, thin necks, very long arms, and very long legs. There are those that tell us that these gods who came from the skies traveled through the land in magical boats made of bright metal, silver, copper, and even gold. boats which had the ability to sail over water or even to fly through the sky like birds. Throughout Africa, we are told that these mysterious beings taught human beings many things. They taught human beings how to have laws, knowledge of herbal medicine, knowledge of arts, and knowledge of the mysteries of creation and the cosmos as a whole. We are told that some of these gods had the ability to change their shapes at will. They had the ability to assume the shape and the appearance of any creature that there is on earth whenever they had good reason to do so. A sky god could even turn himself into a rhinoceros or an elephant or even a stork. A sky god could even turn itself into a rock or even a tree. I want to stop there for just a second. We're about 8 minutes out from break, and I'm going to finish the account when we come back. There's something I want to share with you from the account of Berosus, who was an ancient Chaldean historian, and that he lived during the time of Alexander the Great. And he speaks about an entity that comes from the sea, which Credo makes mention of this particular individual as well. And that this particular individual was responsible for establishing the Babylonian Empire and those particular people. And that having come from the sea and jumping the gun on evolution, that this entity known as a fish god, that he was part human and part fish, that this individual is attributed as being the one that brought knowledge to humanity, in the same way that the feathered serpent is attributed as having done so for the Mayans and the Aztecs and the South American peoples. And so before we get to break, I'm going to share part of this passage. We have 6 minutes, so it says, and this is from the history of polyhistor. At Babylon there was in these times a great resort of people of various nations who inhabited Chaldea and lived in a lawless manner, like the beasts of the field. In the first year there appeared from that part of the Erythraean Sea, which borders upon Babylonia, an animal destitute of reason, by name Oannes, whose whole body, according to the account of Apollodorus, was that of a fish, and that under the fish's head he had another head with feet also below, similar to those of a man, subjoined to the fish's tail. His voice too and language was articulate and human, and a representation of him is preserved even to this day. This being was accustomed to pass the day among men, but took no food at that season, and he gave them an insight into letters and sciences and arts of every kind. He taught them to construct cities, to found temples, to compile laws, and explained to them the principles of geometrical knowledge. He made them distinguish the seeds of the earth, and showed them how to collect the fruits In short, he instructed them in everything which could tend to soften manners and humanize their lives. From this time, nothing material has been added by way of improvement to his instructions. And when the sun had set, this being Onis retired again into the sea, and passed the night in the deep, for he was amphibious. And after that there appeared other animals, like Onis, of which Berosus proposes to give an account when he comes to the history of the kings. Moreover, Onis wrote concerning the generation of mankind, and of their civil polity, and the following is a purport of what he said. I don't think we have time to cover that. All right, 3 more minutes. I'll read a little bit more. It says, there was a time in which there existed nothing but darkness and an abyss of waters, wherein resided most hideous beings, which were produced of a twofold principle. There appeared men, some of whom were furnished with 2 wings, others with 4, and with 2 faces. They had 1 body but 2 heads, the one that of a man, the other of a woman, and likewise in their several organs, both male and female. Other human figures were to be seen with the legs and the horns of goats. Some had horses' feet, while others united the hindquarters of a horse with the body of a man, resembling in shape the centaurs. Bulls likewise were bred there with the heads of men, and dogs with 4-fold bodies terminated in their extremities with tails of fishes. Horses also with the heads of dogs, men too, and other animals with the heads and bodies of horses, and the tails of fishes. In short, there were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animals. In addition to these, fishes, reptiles, serpents, with other monstrous animals, which assumed each other's shape and countenance, of all which were preserved delineations in the temple of Belus at Babylon. Now, what is interesting is that when we come back from break, I'm going to share a passage from the Sumerian Chronicles, and it speaks about and talks about the genetic experimentations that took place within this particular building, and how the Sumerians, the Anunnaki, were trying to create a slave race of what was the first hominid which they discovered here on the earth, and that this particular being looked like Bigfoot. And so it's a very interesting story on, again, the differentiation of what the Bible accounts as the Pre-Adamites and that of modern humanity. In that in the Sumerian teachings, it affirms this same concept that the Pre-Adamites are called the primitive workers, and the modern humans that came upon the scene, they are called civilized man. And so, again, it's intriguing that both the Sumerian pagan accounts align with the biblical affirmations of 2 creations of humanity, even in what is the Second World Age. And so we'll be right back for second hour.
Sacred Word Revealed
comes to Atlanta, Georgia,
on September 11 to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end-time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation.
We must don the full armor of God.
Featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Pastor Stephen Pigeon,
Zen Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Every day, questions arise.
are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And this evening we are exploring the testimony of Credo Mutwa, who was a South African Sangoma, a Sanusi, an ancient shaman or medicine man. And he, before his passing, had decided to share his ancient wisdom with the world and to confirm that there is a group of beings, reptilian in nature, that have been ruling from the shadows and from behind the scenes, affecting and influencing the collective destiny of humanity. And that, strange as it sounds, these concepts are affirmed in other very ancient manuscripts, like those that I've been sharing and reading in study for you over multiple hours of broadcast. And that these particular beings are spoken about in all the mythologies of the world. Even in the Bible, they are affirmed. Even Satan, the fallen cherub, who's said in reference in the scriptures as being that ancient dragon, that this deity is said to be seraphic in appearance. As well, that Cain, the child said to be of the wicked one, and the progenitor and the father of the tares, that this particular being is also said to have a reptilian nature or characteristic. And it's, again, very odd, especially to those that have never looked at or studied these concepts in the ancient mythologies. And, it's every culture worldwide that if you look at the religion of the antediluvian age, that often you find the peoples all over the world giving reverence and worshiping and giving honor to what are deities that are said to be feathered serpents, winged snakes, or pinioned dragons. And it's all the same metaphorically. That even the name for America in the ancient Peruvian, language, America, or Amaru, is a god, similar to Viracocha and Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, which means plumed serpent. And that Amaru was a very ancient basilisk that lived in the interior of the earth. His domain was said to be within the earth, much like Sheol, and how Satan is, rules over Tartarus and the bottomless pit, Sheol, Gehenna. And that this particular deity was said to be a feathered serpent as well. And that the ancient symbol for the feathered serpent is the phoenix, which was also a plumed serpent. And from that, we have metamorphing. The symbol of America now is the eagle. But in ancient times, the eagle also, in most ancient times, is a representation of the phoenix. And so we have here hidden within the name of America even reverence for the feathered serpent, the Nakash that beguiled Eve and impregnated her with Cain, that ancient dragon which in Revelation 12:9 it says deceiveth the whole world. And so again, as strange as all of this sounds, this is the reality of what we are contending with as world. And so let's continue with Credo's narrative, because there's so much. I mean, I could really do a whole nother 2-hour show on just his testimony alone without the commentary and other sources that I'm adding to provide you a greater insight into this particular revelation. But all right, let's continue. We are told that some of these gods had the ability to change their shapes at will. They had the ability to assume the shapes and the appearance of any creature that there is on earth whenever they had good reason to do so. Now, is that not exactly like what it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 about Satan being able to shapeshift and to present himself even as an angel of light? I mean, again, strange as it sounds, biblically accurate. Continuing. In Africa, these mysterious gods are known by various names. In West Africa, in the land of the Bumbari people, these amphibian or reptilian sky gods are known as the Zishwezi. The word Zishwezi means either the swimmers or the diverse or gliders. It was said that these sky gods could dive from above the clouds and go down to the top of a mountain whenever they felt like it. They could also take deep dives into the bottoms of the oceans and from there fetch magical objects and then bring them to the shore and placing them at the feet of the astonished black people. The land of the Dogon people, we find the famous Nomo, a race of reptilian or amphibious beings who were said to have come from the Sirius star system to give knowledge and religion to the black people of Dogon. Which it's interesting to me that in the Bible, the Philistines, the ancient Philistines, they worshipped a half fish and half human deity who we call Dogon. But this individual was then called Oanese, just as I had read from earlier and previously. And so, again, it's all the same story. And I would also inform you that this character, Dogon, that the Pope, his hat is the mitre that the Pope wears, his top hat, that it is a representation of this fish god, Oanese, also called a Dogon here. And so, we'll continue. One is told that when the Nomo arrived from the sky in their fantastic sky ships, there were several of them, 13 or 14 of them, and they created a lake around their skyship, and every morning they used to swim from the skyship to the shores of the lake and there preach to the people who assembled in large numbers around the lake. It is said that before the Nomo departed, returning with a great noise back to their home star, they first chose one of their number, killed it, and cut its body up into little pieces. And they gave these pieces to the assembled people to eat in the first sacrificial ritual of its kind on earth. And when the people had eaten the sacred flesh of the star creature and drunk its blood mixed with water, the Nomo took the lower jaw of their creature and by some incredible fact of magic brought the whole creature back to life again. We are told that this is the way that the Nomo taught our people that there is no death and that behind every death there shall be resurrection. In the Americas and South and Central America, mostly the feathered serpent is called Quetzalcoatl. And amongst my people, the Zulus, we find belief in a serpent called Yandandala. The Yandandala is said to be a huge mamba or a huge python whose neck is covered in grayish blue feathers, like the feathers of a blue crane, and at the top of the serpent's head grow 3 feathers, one green, one red, one and a white one, which looks like a huge ostrich tail feathers. And so you see again that Credo speaks about all these various tribes in Africa that all speak about these ancient beings descending down out of the sky, out of the heavens, and coming to the earth. They taught them, gave them knowledge, but they demanded that they be worshipped as gods. And it's interesting because not only were these beings worshipped in Africa, but it seems that in the antediluvian times, they were reverenced all over the world, and that the worship of the feathered serpent was, in fact, what was the most ancient religion of that time. That when the fallen angels descended out of the heavens, they established these pagan belief systems and worship of themselves as gods when they are nothing more than angels that are parading as if they are gods. We know them, according to the biblical story, to be the angels which rebelled against the Most High in the very ancient times, and creating a war in heaven, they were cast out, cast down, and banished here to this world, to this earth. And they were banned, exiled from the presence of God. And so they were here on the earth before we were. And this is the part of the story that people have to understand, because otherwise one would not and could not make sense of why it is that we see all throughout the world megalithic structures and cyclopean architecture built in a manner that is aligned to not only the solstices and equinoxes, but to various star systems, constellations. And these techniques show a superior knowledge and capacity that humanity did not have in those very ancient times. And certainly the structures that were built in achievement by them in these very ancient times are things that cannot be replicated even in this day and age. Like modern humanity cannot even lift with all of their cranes and all of their modern technology, even some of these stones that are said to weigh hundreds of tons each, that there was a knowledge and technological capacity that the fallen ones had that we can't even match in this day and age. And so that in and of itself should show you and affirm that we were not the designers. We were not the creators of those ancient worlds and of those ancient city complexes. Which I remind you that in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23 through 30, God shows Jeremiah and instructs him of a time when judgment was brought upon the fallen angels and their culture and the whole mythology, the stories of Atlantis being destroyed in a single hour, in a single day, and disappearing so completely that there were nothing left but traces of mud filled waters, and that the landscape was so completely swallowed that the the world and the cities and the culture of these people completely disappeared, so that there was nothing left other than the memory and the remembrance of them in the minds of man. And so I'm going to share with you a few other things that Credo talks about. And this one is actually from the story of the interview with Rick Martin of Nexus magazine. And he describes even how there were multiple deities that came out of the sky. Some of them were even white-skinned, Nordic-looking individuals. And, this was said to be, Quetzalcoatl was said to be a white man-looking deity that had a beard, which was unusual for the people in South America, who were unable to grow facial hair. And so it was intriguing to them that this particular deity was said to have, not only white skin, but was able to grow a beard. And he was said to be, again, one of his embodiments was the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, which means plumed serpent. So I'll read this. Many, many centuries ago, before the first white men came to Africa, we African people encountered a race of alien beings which looked exactly like the European white men who were going to invade Africa in our future. These alien creatures are tall. Some of them are rather well built, like athletes, and they have slightly slanting blue eyes and high cheekbones. And they have golden hair. They look exactly like the Europeans of today. With one exception, their fingers are beautifully made, long, and like those of musicians and artists. Now these creatures came to Africa out of the sky in crafts which look like boomerangs of the Australian people. And now when one of these craft came down to land, it created a whirlwind of dust which makes a very large sound indeed, like that of a tornado. In the language of South African tribes, a whirlwind is Zungar Uzunga. Now our people gave several names to these white-skinned aliens. They called them the Wanzungu, a word which loosely means God, but literally means people of the dust devil or the whirlwind. Let me check and see how much time I have. We've got 5 minutes, so. All right, I'll continue reading. And our people were familiar with these Wazunga from the start. They saw them, and they saw that some, in fact, many of these Wazunga carry what appears to be a sphere made of crystal or glass, a sphere which they always playfully bounce like a ball in their hands. And when a force of warriors tries to capture a Wazunga, the Wazunga throws this ball into the air, catches it in his hands, and then disappears. But some Wazunga were captured by Africans in the past and forcibly kept prisoners in the village of the chiefs. And in the caves of shamans, the person who had captured the Mzunga, as he is called in singular, had to make sure that he kept the glass globe well hidden from the Wanzunga. So long as he kept the globe hostage, the Mzungu could not escape. And when Africans saw the real Europeans, the white men from Europe, they transferred to them the name Wazungu. And before we met the people from Europe, we Africans, we had met white-skinned Wazungu. And we transferred the name of Wazungu to the real Europeans from the aliens. Now in the Zulu language, we call a white man Umlungu. Now the word Umlungu means exactly the same as Wazungu, a god or a creature which creates a big whirlwind underground. In Zaire, called now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, white people are called Watende or Walende. This again means a god or a white creature. And the word Watende not only is used to refer to the pink-skinned alien, but is also used to refer to the field Chitauli. In Zaire, when shamans talk fearfully about the lords who control the earth, they refer to them not as Chitauli, but they refer to them euphemistically as Watende wa Miondi, that is, the white creature which carries a light. Because at night the Chitauli's forehead eye glows like red lights in the dense bush. All right, let me see. 2 minutes. They glow like the rear lights of an automobile in dense bush. So a Watende wa Muindi, the white creature, the light, that is what the Chitauli are called in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are over 24 other alien-type hybrid creatures that we Africans know about. But I will tell you briefly now about 2 others. This is tied to the primitive worker, which I'll read more about when we come back from break. The Sumerian account of the primitive worker, or the Pre-Adamites. It says, "Sir, in the country called Zimbabwe, where I had my encounter in 1959, there's also another creature. This is the most amazing creature. And I saw it once, and so did several other people, some black and some white, who were with me. This creature is a huge creature, and shaped exactly like a gorilla, but it is unlike a gorilla, which often walks on its feet, as well as on its knuckles." Yeah, I'll share more when we come back, and we'll kind of conclude and tie this all together with just a few more accounts, and then I'll, share the distinction of the 2 creations as referenced in Genesis 1 and 2, as well as in the Sumerian account of the primitive worker and the civilized man. Which again, as I stated earlier, it's amazing that you have these accounts conveyed within both the Bible as well as the Sumerian narrative. So, yeah, you can read it for yourself. And I will be right back for final segment.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Listen with the promise of the cross.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Multiple sources from all of these ancient accounts that all verify one another. And so, even though it sounds bizarre, you have to open yourself to such possibility in order to make sense of the ancient past and how we got to be where we are now. All right. This creature is a huge creature and shaped exactly like a gorilla, but it is unlike a gorilla, which often walks on its feet as well as on its knuckles. The creature I'm talking about, sir, stands about 8 feet or 9 feet high and is built exactly like a gorilla, but its body is very powerful. Its shoulders are very wide. Its neck is very thick. It is covered with thick, rough hair, like no other wild animal in Africa. It is a humanoid creature with thighs and legs and feet, as well as arms and hands, which look exactly like those of a human being, only covered with a heavy mat of dark brown fur. This creature, sir, is known as Ogo by the people of Zimbabwe, and schools of people have seen this creature hundreds over the many generations. Some of these creatures have been seen right here in South Africa in isolated bushy and mountainous places. And these ogre are detail for detail exactly like what the Native American people or of the northwestern United States call a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. In fact, I say it is the same creature, and we have it right here in southern Africa. It is also exactly the same creature, but with a totally different skin color as the one that is seen by the people of Nepal on the slopes of the Himalayan mountains, the creature that is called a Yeti. Now then, the last creature, sir, a creature which is so well known in South Africa and elsewhere in Africa, that if you mention its name, people smiled. It is called a Tokoloshi. Every African knows what a Tokoloshi is. Some call it Tikolushi. It looks like a very nasty looking teddy bear in appearance. It its head is like that of a teddy bear, but it has got a thick, sharp, bony ridge on the top of its head. The ridge goes from above its forehead to the back of its head, and with this ridge, it can knock down an ox by butting it with its head. This creature causes the black people in certain places to raise their beds on bricks, one brick laid on top of the other, one about 3 feet above the ground. And you find this all over South Africa. This Tokolishi likes to play with children and has been seen hundreds of times by school children in various parts of South Africa, even in recent times. Sometimes it will terrorize children by scratching them as they sleep, leaving long parallel scratches on a child's back and upon a child's thigh. Scratches that become infected and itch terribly. About 2 years ago, a creature like this terrorized the whole school of children in Soweto near Johannesburg, and the school children called it Pinky Pinky. Now, this creature is not only known in South Africa amongst black people, it is also known, sir, amongst Polynesian people of Hawaii and other islands in the Pacific. These people lift their huts, their grass houses on stilts, to the height exactly that Africans lift their beds. All right, and so I want to go back to what we were talking about with the Bigfoot type creature, and keep that in mind when I read this account. Of the primitive worker from the Sumerian tales. And also keep in mind that, hello Rio, welcome, that this is very ancient, said to be like 6,000 years old, what the story I'm going to read. It's from cuneiform manuscripts. I gotta pull it up. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's see. Okay. This creature is called the primitive worker. And this goes back to the story of when the Anunnaki were trying to create a slave race so that they wouldn't have to work in the mines. Because according to their story, they were here to extract gold. And the reason being is that, according to the account, they were undergoing ecological disaster on their planet, Nibiru, the planet of the crescent. And that it was said to have been going through ecological disaster every time it came near the sun in its approach. That it had a 3,600 year cycle of orbit. And that whenever it came close to the inner portion of the so-called solar system, that the sun's rays would wreak havoc upon not only those people and creatures, but upon, the atmosphere. And so they believed they had a resolution, and that was to crush up gold into powder form and to suspend it into the atmosphere. And that in that way it would reflect and to diffract the, this particular substance. It would protect, the gold would protect it from the harmful rays of the sun. And so, of course, we know that the Copernican heliocentric model that is affirmed by the Sumerian teachings is not truthful. But that's a whole nother story. Let me just go ahead and read this particular account. A solution is possible, Enki was saying. Let us create a Lulu, a primitive worker, the hardship work to take over. Let the being, the toil of the Anunnaki carry on his back. Astounded were the besieged leaders, speechless indeed they were. Who ever heard of a being afresh created, a worker who the Anunnaki's work can do? They summoned Ninma, one of who healing and succor was much knowing. Enki's words to her they repeated, whoever of such a thing heard. They her asked. The task is unheard of, she to Enki said. All beings from a seed have descended, one being from another over eons did develop. None from nothing ever came. How right you are, my sister, Enki said. Smiling, a secret of the Abzu let me to you all reveal. The being that we need, it already exists. All that we have to do is put on it the mark of our essence. Thereby a Lulu, a primitive worker, shall be created. So did Enki say to them. So did Enki to them say, let us hereby decision make, a blessing to my plan give, to create a primitive worker by the mark of our essence, to fashion him. To create a being that we need, it already exists. Thus did Enki to them a secret of the Abzu reveal. With astonishment to the other leaders, Enki's words hear. By the words they were fascinated. Creatures in the Abzu there are, Enki was saying, that walk erect on two legs. Their forelegs they use as arms. With hands they are provided. Among the animals of the steppe they live. They know not dressing in garments. They eat plants with their mouths. They drink water from lake and ditch. Shaggy with hair. On is their whole body. Their head hair is like a lion's. With gazelles they jostle. With teeming creatures in the waters they delight. The leaders to Enki's words with amazement listen. No creature like that has ever in the Eden been seen. Enlil, disbelieving, said eons ago, on Nibiru, our predecessors like that might have been. Ninma was saying, it is a being, not a creature. Ninma was saying, to behold it must be a thrill. To the house of life Enki led them. In strong cages there were some of the beings. At the sight of Enki and the others, they jumped up. With fists on the cage, bars they were beating. They were grunting and snorting. No words were they speaking. Male and female they are, Enki was saying. Male hoods and female hoods they have. Let us from Nibiru coming, they are procreating. Ningishita, my son, their fashioning essence has tested. Again, to ours it is like two serpents. It is entwined, speaking about the DNA. And when there with our life essence shall be combined, our mark upon them shall be. A primitive worker shall be created. Our commands will be understood. Our tools he will handle. The toil in the excavations he shall perform. To the Anunnaki and the Abzu relief shall come. So was Enki with enthusiasm, saying with excitement. His words came forth. Enlil at the words was hesitating. The matter is one of great importance. On our planet, slavery has long ago been abolished. Tools are the slaves, not other beings. A new creature beforehand not existing, you wish to bring into being? Creation in the hands of the Father of all. Beginning alone is held. So was Enlil in opposing, saying. Stern were his words, but Enki to his brother responded, not slaves, but helpers is my plan. The being already exists, Ninma was saying. To give more ability is the plan. Not a new creature, but one existing more. In our image made. Enki with persuasion said, with little change it can be achieved. Only a drop of our essence is needed. A grave matter it is not to my liking. Enlil was saying, against the rules of from planet to planet journeying it is. By the rules of to earth coming it was forbidden. To obtain gold was our purpose. To replace the Father of all beginning it was not. After Enlil thus had spoken, Ninma was the one who responded. My brother, Ninma to Enlil was saying, with wisdom and understanding has the Father of all beginning us endowed. To what purpose have we so been perfected, else of it utmost use to make? With wisdom and understanding has the Creator of all our life essence filled. To whatever using of it we capable are. Is it not that for which we have been destined? So was Ninma, words to her brother Enlil, directing with that which in our essence was granted. Tools and chariots we have perfected. Mountains with terror weapons we shattered. Skies with gold we are healing. So was Ninurta to his birth-giving mother, saying, let us with wisdom new tools fashion, not new beings create. Let by new equipments, not by slave beings, the toil be relieved. Where to our understanding does us lead? To that we have been destined. So was Ningishida saying with Enki and Ninma. He in agreement was. What knowledge we possess in use cannot be prevented. Ningishida was saying destiny indeed cannot be altered. From the beginning to the end, it has been determined. All right, we've got just a few more minutes. And so I'm not going to read the rest of the story, but basically they decided to do it, and they decided to alter the DNA of this particular Bigfoot type creature, and that they were then able to create a being that could serve them and to perform menial tasks and to take on labor as it was instructed and forced to do. And it was thereafter that I believe, as a judgment, um, that God created his own creature, highly capable, modern humanity. That modern humanity came upon the scene, and that judgment was levied upon the Anunnaki, the fallen ones, for, basically trying to create a slave race. And so, this is a part of the story that is not greatly understood. Not only was, um, God going to bring judgment through humanity, modern humanity, but Christ would be born through Adam's bloodline in order to rectify the fall, to restore them to their first estate, and also to bring judgment upon the fallen ones, the Anunnaki, the Archons, the powers, the principalities, rulers of darkness, whatever you want to call them, for the things they were doing, which were an abomination. I'll read just a little bit more so you can get an idea as to what I'm talking about. To a place among the trees, Ninmah, he directed a place of cages. It was. In the cages there were odd creatures, their likes in the wild no one had seen. Foreparts of one kind they had, hinder parts of another creature they possessed. Creatures of two kinds by their essence, combined to Ninmah Enki was showing. To the house of life they returned, to a clean place with brightness shining. They led her. In the clean place, Ningishita to Ninmah, the life essence secrets was explaining how the essence from the kinds combined can be. He to her was showing the creatures in the tree cages are too odd, monstrous they are, Ninmah was saying. Indeed so, Enki responded. To attain perfection, for that you are needed. How the essences to combine, how much of this, how much of that to put together. In which womb conception to begin? In which womb should the birth be given? For that you're secure, and healing understanding are needed. The understanding of one who gave birth, who a mother is required. A smile on the face of Ninmah was the two daughters that by Enki she mothered, she well remembered. And so you can see that they were creating all of these hybrid creatures, and that performing these genetic experimentations, they were able to achieve successfully creating somewhat of a slave race. But, God was not happy with what they were doing. And because of that, judgment was brought upon them. And in my opinion, that's where we have the story of what is civilized man coming upon the stage, which I didn't even really get to that, and which we won't really even have the time for that in this particular show. But I'm probably going to leave it there because I'm going to release this book within a week or two. And then I'm going to move on to producing the Book of Enoch, the script, the movie script, which I'm kind of very excited about looking into and doing. I've never done something like that before, and Rob and I are going to work on this together, and I think it's going to be a very interesting storyline once we are able to put it together in a manner that brings forth all of the research that we've done on this, what is very incredible story. You're welcome, Grippy, and thank all of you again for joining me for this broadcast. Don't forget, tomorrow night I will be on with Sean Griffin, Kingdom in Context, and we're going to be discussing the continued, as far as, discussing the topic of serpent seed, which he is against. And of course, I've been a very huge proponent of it as part of the skeleton key for unlocking so much that remains hidden within Scripture. And thank all of you again that joined us in live broadcast. We appreciate all of you so very much. And, as I said, I will be releasing this book on the Pre-Adamites and the Antediluvian Age, and I know many of you have been waiting for it for quite some time now. And I think it will greatly bless your life and help you to understand, how the war in heaven connects to the destruction of the first world age, the earth becoming without form and void, and then how the fall of humanity ties into what is the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and the ongoing war between these two bloodlines as it rages on all throughout the history of humanity to what is and will be the conclusion at the end of the age with the second advent of Christ and the return of the Messiah. And then we have the separation of the wheat and the tares. And so, and I, think that we are living in those times now. Thank you, Be Good Broadcast. I appreciate that. I'm really overdoing the shows, and I know my voice is not wanting to hold out, and so at some point I'm going to have to slow down, but until then I'm just going to continue to bring this information, this knowledge to you, and I'm going to be inviting more guests so that I can spend less time reading and using my voice, because it's not wanting to hold up. And so thank you for the prayers. I appreciate all of you. Be blessed in your study. Good night, all.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.